time to fuel your business success. Welcome to Harmonious at Lunch. We're bringing you bite-sized advice and expert conversations to drive clarity and growth 5 days a week. Make sure you join our Facebook group at humanoff.com/lunch, where listeners like you and our guests hang out so we can find harmony in business together. If you're building a business, you're in the right place. Let's dive in.
Welcome back into some more bite-sized business advice. In today's episode, we're talking about how to achieve time freedom. That's right. It's a big topic on this show. I know our listeners and subscribers always love these episodes. And this one's going to be a little bit different because it's not something else you have to do in your business. We're going to look outside your business and where you're putting your money so that you can make it work for you rather than working for it. Chris Miles, welcome to the show and thank you for being here.
Man, Brandon, I'm so excited to be here with you.
I love this conversation. I can't wait to dive in. So we're talking about getting our time back, alternate investments. Do I hear that you're a drug dealer importing cocaine from South America? Is that what we're doing?
You know what? I'm going to make it easier. It doesn't have to be illegal. You don't have to spend that much time and energy doing it. But no, we're not going all blacklist or, on you here. We're doing this legit.
I love it. Yeah. Talk about damaging your reputation. Come on this show and I'll damage it for you in 10 seconds. But no, because selling drugs is, far too labor intensive. So that's not, our audience is too busy for that anyway. So let's talk about what we're actually doing here, because time freedom is a big thing. It's what a lot of people want. I think a lot of people get into business thinking that that's just an automatic byproduct. And you quickly realize that it's really not. And it's kind of hard to achieve. So where do you typically start with this conversation when people say, Chris, how do you not work as much as I do, but you have way more money than I have?
Yeah, I hear from our people all the time. They're like, Chris, listen, I make good money. And yeah, even from the outside, my life looks amazing. I've got a lot of money, we go on trips, we do all this kind of cool stuff with my family. But the problem is, Chris, I'm still tied to my business, my career, my job. I'm still stuck. Right? It doesn't matter how much money I make. It doesn't matter how much I've saved. I'm still stuck here. I still have to keep being a slave to the work that even if I love what I do, I'm still a slave to it. And that's the thing is most people think in business, okay, I just got to hire the right person. Maybe AI will help me out and free up some time here, which let's be honest, even when we free up time with AI, we find a way to fill it anyways, or some system or whatever. But the truth is most of our people are like, Chris, I wish I could just get my money working harder for me, so I don't have to work so hard for my money. And that's ultimately what we do. And I had to learn that same painful experience myself because I was the traditional slave and save kind of guy, right? I actually used to be a financial advisor back in the day. And the first realization of this for myself, because I believed in the dream. I drank the Kool-Aid where, how you're supposed to just stuff money away, throw it in your mutual fund, your 401k and all that kind of stuff. And then eventually someday you're going to live off of it. And I thought, if I just save up at least a couple $1 million, I'll live on my 3% a year. That's 60,000 a year. At the time, I thought 5,000 a month was great. This is around the year 2000. So 5,000 a month is more like 10, 12,000 a month here. And of course, in my 20s, that sounded great. But here's the thing is that I remember I sat down with my dad, and my dad was the penny pinching saver as well, right? I mean, this guy was dirt cheap. Bought cereal in bulk, because he got it on sale. So I ate Cap'n Crunch for entire years straight because it was on sale, that kind of stuff, And then I sat down with him and he's like, Chris, I'm 61 years old. I want to quit. I want to retire at this point. And I said, all right, well, let me look at everything. He was debt free. So Dave Ramsey, we've been so proud of him. He had stuffed money in his 401k for decades. And despite all that, I said, Dad, if you were to retire today, you'd have to die in 5 or 6 years because that's when you're going to run out of money based on how you're living. What do? I don't know. You did everything right. And I was stuck. I didn't know what to do, right? I didn't know where to turn. So of course, when the student's ready, the teacher appears, I start finding out things like alternative investments, real estate investing and things like that. And I realized it wasn't about trying to save and accumulate all this money. It's about how do I get my money to work for me? How do I actually produce actual income for me? And so I started doing things not just rentals, although I did that, but I could lend my money to real estate investors and make, 1% a month. So if I had $100,000, I'm making $1,000 a month. If I have $1 million, I'm making $10,000 a month, right? where normally $1 million in the financial advisor world means you can only live on $30,000 a year, about $2,500 a month. So I'm able to quadruple my income with the same money. And so when I was 28, almost 29 years old, I was actually able to retire. I quit being a financial advisor. I vowed never to do it again. And I did the exact opposite of what I taught. And that's why in 2007, I came out to teach people how to do just that. And that's what we have people do all the time is like, they've been good savers. They've been responsible with their money. But the problem is they're like, if I keep this up, what am I going to do? You know, like I had a guy that reached out to the other day and he's like, I've got $3 million saved up and I'm saving $200,000 a year to add to it. He's 52 years old. His financial advisor said, okay, well, if you want to live on that $500,000 a year that you want to live on, well, you got to save up, keep saving for the next 13 years. And hopefully the market doesn't go down in the meantime. Right. And he's like, you telling me like, even with $3 million, which is way above and beyond, like you're in the top 1%, a fraction of 1% of people with money there. And he still can't retire. I told him, I was like, dude, we could take that $3 million, even if you made just 10% a year in passive real estate investments that are more certain than like the stock market. You could take that $3 million, make it $300,000 a year today. And on top of that, if you take that $300,000 plus your $200,000, that's $500,000. Guess what? Your $300,000 becomes $350,000 next year, then over $400,000 next year. Within 4 years, you're over $500,000 a year. Not 13 years hoping and praying the market will work out for you. You could do it right now. And that's the big thing everybody misses because every financial advisor is not paid to make you money. Financial advisors are paid really just to get paid to sell you products. And so that's the thing you got to break free from.
Yeah, it kind of blows my mind. I mean, they're really paid to protect your money before anything else and not lose it, which to me
and
is
even
never
then they
a
lose
good
it.
strategy. Yeah, even then they lose it. But imagine going to like being a coach of a football game. It's like, we're just trying not to lose. Like that's a backwards strategy. That's the best defense is a really good offense. Always. I'm just a huge proponent of that. And it sounds like a really difficult conversation to have with a family member, let alone your dad, but really interesting how it sparked that journey. And I'll say, Dave Ramsey fans, please plug your ears for this episode or just skip. Like you're not gonna like what we say here. But I had that same realization a number of years ago when, I kind of looked at 401ks and IRAs and all that stuff, and they're just not for everybody. I'm not going to knock them in general, but they're not for me. I'll say that. I want to do more aggressive things with my money. And I looked at it and I was like, oh, cool. So if you save this amount over 40 years, you basically would retire with, I don't know, 1.5, 2 million. You make the 3% and it comes out to, I don't know, some nominal amount. Like you said, it's like
60,000 a year.
Yeah. It's nothing crazy. But then I did the other side of the equation that the financial planners don't typically tell you about is like, well, inflation, that $60,000 a year is going to be pennies. I mean, $60,000 a year 5 years ago was survivable. Today, you're dead broke in most parts of the country, if not all. So you just can't make it work. And your dad had that unfortunate realization, but that's why we're having this conversation. Because I think for business owners, I even have a couple of clients who are in the same kind of boat as like, my business produces good money, but I was always advised to put it in a 401k and I really can't retire anytime soon. That's not a good place to be. So I'm a huge proponent of this for business owners and entrepreneurs. So all of that being said, let's fast forward to, okay, what can we actually do? Let's assume maybe people do have money in 401ks, IRAs. Is there a way to sort of get that out? Are we going to pay the penalties? Are we going to pay the taxes? Can we roll it over into something? Like, what are the options for people who are sort of quote unquote established in that world?
Yeah, the big thing I teach is like these three things, which is get lean, get liquid, and get out, right? Now, get lean just means be a wise steward of your money. Watch your money. Watch how much is coming in, watch how much is going out. Use things like Rocket Money or whatever you use to track your monthly incoming and outgoing, your income and expenses, right? Just like you would in business. I mean, you do that. You're checking your P&L all the time. Do that at home. But it doesn't mean you have to be cheap. It's not mean you're living on rice and beans, cutting out that latte because that's what, all the guys with the name David say, whether it's Dave Ramsey or David Bach, they're telling you to be cheap. Don't do that. You don't have to do that. Just be a wise steward of your money. Make sure you're putting your money where you want it to be. Get liquid means get your money out of prison. Notice that everything a financial advisor tells you to do is locking your money in prison away from you. It's actually into the very institutions they work for. For example, you say you work with somebody at Merrill Lynch, right? Well, they're telling you to put the money in there. And whether you make money or not, they still take their 1% plus fee every single year, right? Even if they lose your money, they still get paid when you don't. So remember, like, don't just lock it up in those 401ks and IRAs. You can't access that money. That's a trap, especially if you work for a company. Same thing with debt, right? They always say pay off your house. Well, I've seen so many people pay off their house and they're literally like, I'm now worth 2 million, 3 million now in net worth, paid off house. I've got money stuffed in this 401k, the IRAs, but now I can't do anything. I literally have no income coming in. I'm still stuck slaving away. Even if you love your work, again, I get it because I love what I do too, but still you rather be work optional where you work because you want to, not because you have to. So to answer your question, Brandon, like 401ks and IRAs, right? Can you do anything? Well, if you're working as an employee of a company, no, it's stuck. Unless you quit or get fired, I don't recommend that. Change jobs maybe, but you can't get to it. Now, as an entrepreneur, you can, because you could shut down that 401k plan at work. And just so you know, everybody's worried like, what about my employees? Just so you know, your employees don't give a crap. I had one dentist, for example, he had 10 employees. He said, well, if I shut down this 401k plan, will they get mad at me? I said, well, just tell them this. What are you matching them right now? 3%. Just tell them all they get a 3% raise today. Whether they're saving the 401k or not, they just got a 3% raise and they get to choose where to put that 3%. They can take that 3%, put it into their Roth IRAs if they want, or pay off debt or blow it, whatever they want to do with it, right? They can still do the same thing. And by the way, 401ks, they just suck. Their funds underperform the stock market so badly that your match just makes up for the bad performance, right? So be careful of that. So now if you have money in those 401k plans, yes, you can do what's called a self-directed IRA. You can roll it out of those plans you have. Even if you have an IRA or a Roth IRA, you can move to what's called a self-directed IRA. And in those cases, you can invest it wherever you want. You don't have to be with the financial advisor and mutual funds. You can literally put in the kind of investments we talk about, like whether you're, say you're lending money to investors, right? Or into debt funds or things like that, where they might pay you 10, 12% a year, contractually, right? Not just guessing, like, as the stock market doesn't even pay 12%, they average 8 long-term, but, still be able to make that money there. You can go and invest in like oil and gas, things like that, where that's a big opportunity right now. You can invest in things with self-storage, apartment buildings, all kinds of stuff you could be investing in, even car wash businesses. So you can actually diversify your money away from paper assets, which are just stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. You can diversify away and actually make good income. And yeah, could you cash it out just and say, maybe I don't want to roll it over. Maybe I want to cash it out and get the income now. You could. That's another option as well. And that's why we try to find ways to minimize the tax on that. So then you get to keep more of it to then make more cash flow, make more passive income from it.
Yeah, I like that. And it's just about, understanding that you are in control and you need to be, like the word you said is beautiful, steward. You need to be a wise steward of your finances, just like you are in your business, your personal funds, your investments. You need to look at them the same way. So assuming, we're not talking about buying real estate, or maybe we are, I'll say that. You could be talking about getting into single family homes, apartment buildings, rentals, all that stuff. I'll just come straight out and say that our audience is not interested in that. They're business owners. They're passionate about their business. They don't need to be worrying about that stuff. You're talking about something else, though, primarily. What are the other vehicles that you personally use and you have your clients investing in to make this much larger return?
Yeah, I'm the same way, right? Because I'm a business owner. And the reason I'm still in business today with Money Ripples is because I love it. I love teaching. I love doing what I do every day. And that's why I call it Money Ripples, is that ripple effect you can create in people's lives, with the money you have. Because I make $50,000 a month passively, whether I work or not. So the big difference is this, is like, I don't manage my stuff either. Most people think they just buy a rental property and then they have to manage it and deal with the tenants, the toilets, and the trash. That's not what I'm talking about here. This is hands-off investing. So this is where you actually put the money with other investors, right? People that actually have been doing this for decades. They're doing the work for you. So for example, when I do an oil and gas investment, I don't have to go, well, one, I already have all these connections anyways. So do a lot of my clients, they just borrow my connections. But like these oil and gas investments, like, literally you just go into the partnership, you do nothing. You provide the money, they do the work. Same thing, if I'm lending my money to other real estate investors, they're doing all the work. They're doing the fix and flips. They're just paying me a contractual interest that they have to pay me. And if they don't, like the bank, I can foreclose on them and take the property away and then get my money back and then some, right? I can do things like where, you mentioned apartment buildings and self-storage. Again, I'm hands off. The operators are doing the work. I'm not. Car wash businesses, same thing. I'm only financing it. I'm doing nothing else. One of my favorite investments right now is actually raw land, dirt. Like literally where these guys are buying and selling raw land, usually selling it for triple the price of what we buy it for. And then we mortgage it to those new owners. So like we're getting paid a mortgage payment with interest on that. And so I'm making, I have investment. I put in about $500,000, but it's kicking off about 13,000 a month, doing that. So that's the kind of fun stuff you can do when you're investing passively hands off.
I got to hear more about the raw land thing. That's new. I haven't heard about this before. You're just, you're buying open acreage and then how are you selling it for triple? Are you making improvements to it, or these people, like, what are they doing to sell it for that much higher?
Yeah. So these guys are just going in and they're buying at wholesale price. They might buy it off somebody who's just trying to, because most people aren't trying to buy land, right? So, but the land, if it has a lot more value than what they're selling it for, and that might just be farmers just trying to sell off acreage or whatever it might be, they buy that land, but then they go and they're blasting, they're using AI, they're using automations, they're using even, Philippine, VAs or whoever else to help find buyers for these properties to turn around and sell it at retail price. So it might be sold to a developer. It might be sold to somebody who just wants recreational land. 2020 was awesome for that because people are saying, hey, I just want a place where I can go away, get away from people and go ride my four-wheelers or go shooting or, whatever I want to do on that piece of land, or just have a place to escape in case you got to live off the grid. Right. So there's a variety of reasons why people want raw land. And that's the thing, like, give me an example. These guys bought like an $8,000 piece of property, wholesale price, but they turned around and sold it to somebody at $30,000 retail. Right. And then they paid me about $488 a month because they get charged 10% for that. Now they could pay it off earlier, just like any mortgage, but they're going to be paying me that for about the next 7 years. So in total, I'm going to pay about $42,000 from $8,000. That's pretty awesome.
Pretty good return. I would take that.
Who wouldn't?
I know who wouldn't. Dave Ramsey wouldn't. It's too risky.
That's right. Especially if you use debt. You never want to do that, right?
You. That bad word. How dare you say bad words on this show? Chris, we're having too much fun here. But I'm curious. So you help people do this, if I'm understanding that correctly. You do this through Money Ripples because it's, yes, a way to make money, but also a passion of yours, which is super cool. If someone reaches out to you, like what does that look like? Are you helping them find investments and then go telling them to do it? Do they give you money and then you put it to work? What's the flow?
Yeah, so we don't take anybody's money that way. We really help you strategize the money and then connect you to those deals. But we're not investment advisors, so we're not cross lines saying you should do this or you should do that. But we would say, based on your situation, your goals, here's some investments you should be looking at. And by the way, we got people in our network that you can use that we've vetted over the years that, again, no guarantees, but this is something we can actually guide and direct you along. We call our work optional blueprint, right? Where we create a blueprint saying, let's find and free up the cash. Can we save money on taxes and do different things to improve cash flow? Like we did with one client, we literally freed up $100,000 a year before we even started investing the money they had trapped in Google and Facebook stock, and so doing things like that, but then connecting with deals, and then they can decide and use us as advisors in a sense that not like an investment advisor, but more like a guide, someone to walk with them. So they can ask us because we're not paid on those deals. We're not like financial advisors that sell you stuff. We're literally just people that help guide you along in that process, map out the game plan, and then get you to implement it so you can create not necessarily like compounding interest, but compounding passive income. That's what we create.
Yeah, no, it's super cool. You have a gift for the listeners that I'll go ahead and put on the screen here. It's your cash flow calculator. It's also down below in the show notes, wherever you're watching or listening. So go check that out. I made the joke to you before we started recording. How much passive income could I earn if I made, or if I invested $1? Obviously that's a joke. Please, if you're listening, don't try to invest $1. But what is the range of where people should expect to start if they want to get into this type of investment? Is it $20,000 in passive income? Is it $500,000? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, generally they should have at least a couple $100,000 that they could invest and do some things with, right? Whether it's sitting in savings, maybe it's trapped in equity in your house or in other properties. We have a lot of people, we just have them sell off rental properties and make more money, and things like that. So wherever you have money that's available, that's the money we can then use to generate passive income. And like I said, generally speaking, someone has, say, $500,000, we could probably make about $50,000 a year, give or take, more or less. So usually it's at least a 10% return on whatever you have in cash that you invest.
I love it. That's awesome. So go check that out. It's on the screen again down below in the show notes. You can play around with the cash flow calculator. Chris, thanks so much for being here. This is a really cool episode.
It's been such a pleasure. Thanks, Brandon.
For those of you watching, listening, thank you for being here too. All of the links are down below. Check them out. We'll see you back on tomorrow's episode of Harmonious at Lunch.
Another episode of Harmonious at Lunch in the books. I hope this episode made you think and you grabbed some actionable ideas to propel your business. Don't forget to like, comment your takeaways, and subscribe wherever you're listening so we can help more entrepreneurs just like you achieve harmony in life and business. For cutting-edge tools that bring clarity to your people and processes, check out humanoff.com.